A window breaks in the night, and a man falls and dies upon the ground below. But who was this man, and what could have led to his death? The man who has died from such a fall was Dr. Frank Olson, a scientist working for the American Biochemical Weapons Program based in Fort Detrick, Maryland. The biochemical program would come to be named MKULTRA, an illegal CIA effort to use drugs and biochemical weapons to deceive, torture, and destroy their enemies. It was an evolution from its smaller and more obscure predecessor, the Archduke Bluebird program. Other programs, like the U.S. Navy's Chatter, also existed while conducting similar and smaller experiments. MKUltra was actually a continuation of CIA research and development upon German experiments with the chemical mescaline during World War II. The German military tried to use chemicals and biological agents against POWs and civilians caught up in the Holocaust to see if they could more easily interrogate information out of a drugged British or Soviet pilot than the usual methods. During these aviation experiments, many test subjects were tortured to death at the hands of German soldiers and scientists. At the conclusion of World War II, America and the Soviet Union had to scoop up what was left of German resources, specifically scientists and intelligence officers who were spared in the war, to use in the coming Cold War between the two great nations. Among these that were sent to the United States of America was an amount of the same doctors that worked on the mescaline projects or similar things. Much like the other Germans sent to America after the war, they began living their new lives with the near zero accountability for their actions during the war. It was this information and field experience that helped kickstart the development of the MKUltra program and its obsession with using chemicals to produce faster results during interrogations and torture. Director Alan Dulles ordered the program to start on April 13, 1953. Heading this effort was Sidney Gottlieb. The aim was to use biological weapons to control minds of select people, hasten the pace of interrogation using new truth serums, and more exotic things. They did not reach these goals. MKUltra was taken so seriously because during the Korean War, there was a legitimate fear that the Chinese, Russians, and North Koreans had access to some sort of coerced mind control or intimidation tactics, being able to strike fear into someone. During the war, some captured American soldiers were tried by the enemy for crimes that they were either entirely fabricated or incredibly exaggerated, although it's most likely that they were desperate to escape the brutal life of a POW on the wrong side of the Korean border. It rustled the jimmies of many in the government and further prompted research into methods of trying to fabricate memories, gaslight victims that were so heavily looked into by MKUltra. Among the broader topics of unconventional espionage, MKUltra invested heavily into small sub-projects investigating certain chemical compounds and concepts for tactical or espionage-use drugs. Hundreds of sub-projects were created, some for creating reducing resistance to alcohol or drugs, some for increasing mental acuity, some for trying to increase human endurance and resistance to torture via drugs and medication. One even suggested the creation and deployment of a drug that makes one become erratic, untrustworthy, and insane. Many of these were not rolled out, but some did succeed. After some time, MKUltra had infiltrated multiple new areas for finding unwilling and unwitting test subjects. The program made deals with colleges, hospitals, prisons, and other institutions to use unwilling and unwitting test subjects as guinea pigs for their research. Some places, specifically colleges, had even built-in science labs for said researchers to operate on campus. One hospital in New York even often offered less in treatment costs for terminal illness patients if they would give consent for drug testing. One of these may have been at Harvard, or one of these built-in institutions, where a certain young man named Ted Kaczynski joined an experiment that required a combined 200 hours of participation. Our friend Ted then went on from young college prodigy to insane mail bomber in just a few years afterwards. In fact, plenty of crazy famous people are suspected to have been experimented on, including the aforementioned Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, the serial killer / cult leader Charles Manson, Boston mobster James Whitey Bulger, and possibly even Sirhan Sirhan, as some people think, but I disagree, who's the assassin of Robert F. Kennedy. It is known that in the days before the Manson murders, Manson and his cult visited a small clinic that is distributing LSD, the same LSD that at the time the CIA owned almost all of the LSD on the planet. After about 20 years of uncontested spending and drug use, MKULTRA was finally concluding. Multiple investigations into these very much illegal and inhumane activities were begun by the legislative branch. These investigators, such as the Church Committee, tried to find everything they could about the program, but many of their original documents were burned in a totally accidental and coincidental fireball that just happened to only consume the top secret records on mass druggings and kidnappings, etc. But some documents survived. Buried deep in the lands of accounting and finances, copies detailing transactions were stored in accounting departments and survived. Although without context as to what they were doing, it's safe to say that no government agency needs that much LSD and that many facilities unless you're doing something shady. And although many are redacted, if you scroll around, you can find some of the weirdest ones on the Freedom of Information Act website and the CIA website. I went there for research. It's pretty cool. Well, that's Tales from the Hood on MKUltra, and remember, say no to drugs and overreaching intelligence agencies. Oh yeah, and that guy Olson, he was most likely drugged by his coworkers, probably to test out the chemicals for the projects. But yeah, thank you for watching. This past year or so, it's been great to make these videos. It's Tales from the Hood on MKUltra.